Good day, everybody. I hope that you're well and I hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on subject and predicate. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. So, we're doing a grade 8 English lesson. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 8. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of subject and predicate. All right. So we said our chapter is subject and predicate. Our subject is English Language Arts. Grade 8. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of subject and predicate is identify the complete subject or complete predicate of a sentence, and to identify the simple subject or simple predicate of a sentence. All right. So when it comes to subject and predicate, right? So every sentence has a complete subject and has a complete predicate. So the complete subject, right? It tells us who or what is doing something. And it is a simple subject plus any other words that describes or modifies it. For example, she sleeps late on weekends. So if we were to identify the subject within that sentence, it tells us who or what is doing something, and then we can say it is she. So she is the completed subject that tells us who or what is doing something. Here it is telling us a simple subject plus any other words that describes or modifies it. But over here it is just, the first one is just she. All right, if we look at another example, it says her best friend sleeps late on the weekend. So her best friend sleeps late on the weekends. And if we were to identify the complete subject that tells us who or what is doing something, then we can say it's her best friend. And then we have, and also when it comes to a complete subject, right? The complete subject tells us who the person or thing is that sleeps late on weekends. And remember, it is either only the noun or it's only the pronoun, or it is the noun and all the other words that tells us who or what sleeps late on a weekend. And then it says a complete predicate. So we have a complete predicate, and a complete predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. It's the action that the person or thing is doing. And the complete predicate, it is the simple predicate plus any other words that describe or modifies it. And if we were to look at examples of a completed predicate that tells us what the subject is doing, then we can say her best friend sleeps. And if we were to say what a best friend does, we can say sleeps. So sleeps is the predicate that tells us what her best friend is doing. Her best friend sleeps late on weekends. And if we look at that sentence, now it says her best friend sleeps late on weekends. And if we were to ask ourselves, what is her best friend doing, which is the subject, then we can say sleeps late on weekends. So when it comes to the complete subject and the complete predicate, right, then the complete subject and predicate, it is it is basically the simple subject or simple predicate plus any other words that describes or modifies it. All right, so now we have a subject and a predicate. And now we have a simple subject, right? And if we have a simple subject tells us who or what is doing something. That is a simple subject. And the simple subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. This time around, it is a just the subject noun. It's only the subject noun, not all the other words it describes or modifies it. So it's only the subject noun, right? Or it's only the pronoun without any other words to describe or modify it. And if we look at an example, it says Jennifer sleeps late on weekends. So Jennifer sleeps late on weekends. And if we were to identify our subject that tells us who or what is doing something, and says Jennifer sleeps late on weekends, and then we will identify our simple subject as just Jennifer, not all the other details that describes or modify it. If you look at the next one, it says her best friend sleeps late on the weekends. And if we were to identify our simple subject, then we will just say friend, not all the other things, not her best friend, just friend. Mrs. Peterson sleeps late on the weekend, and we can say Mrs. Peterson is our simple subject only, not all the other words that describes or modifies it. Only our simple noun or pronoun. And then when it comes to, for example, a simple subject, right? We see the simple subject, it tells us who sleeps late on the weekend. And in this case, it was Jennifer, friend, and Mrs. Peterson. And then we have a simple predicate. And the same with the simple subject, right? We do not still add all the other descriptives and modifying words to it, right? So with the simple predicate, right, it tells us what the subject is doing, just the verb without any other words that describes and modifies it. For example, her best friend sleeps. So sleeps tells us what the best friend is doing. And then the next one says her best friend sleeps late on weekends. And once again, we will say sleeps is our verb. Only because remember we said without any other words to describe or modify it. So only the verb, that is a simple predicate. The simple subject is only the noun or the pronoun. And the simple predicate, right, which is the verb, it tells us what the best friend does. It's the action that the best friend does. Or it tells us the action that the person or thing does. All right, so now we're going to A plus students.ca, and we're going to identify the complete subject or complete predicate of a sentence, and we're going to identify the simple subject or simple predicate of a sentence. All right, so it says identify the complete subject or complete predicate of a sentence. And remember, we said when it comes to a complete subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. It is basically the simple subject plus any other words that describes or modify it. That is a complete subject. And with a complete predicate, tells us what the subject is doing, and it is a simple predicate plus any other words that describes or modifies it. So now we're going to select three words that make up the complete subject. Three words that make up the complete subject. It says, my fearless friend flies down the ramp on a skateboard. My fearless friend flies down the ramp on a skateboard. What do you think first is the three words that make up the complete subject? My fearless friend flies down the ramp on her skateboard. And if we were to identify the three words that make up the simple subject, we can say is my fearless friend. It describes and modifies the subject. So that is our simple subject. All right, the next one says select two words that make up the complete subject. It says dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. So dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. We need to select the two words that make up the complete subject. And if we were to identify the two words that make up a complete subject, we will say is dedicated volunteers. All right, so now we're going to select we're going to our test where we are going to identify the complete subject or we're going to identify the complete predicate in the sentence. And remember, a complete subject, it tells us who or what is doing something. It is the subject plus any other words that describes or modifies it. And the same with the predicate, right? It tells us what the person or thing is doing, and it basically is the predicate plus any other words that describes or modifies it. All right, so now we need to select five words that make up the complete predicate. Five words that makes up the complete predicate. And if we select the five words that make up the complete predicate, it says Paco and Danielle waved from across the room. So if we were to select the complete predicate, is it option one, waved from across the room, or option two, Paco and Danielle waved from? And if we were to select the correct option, we will choose option 1, waved from across the room. And that is our complete predicate. Select the 5 words that make up a complete predicate. It says fleas can jump 7 inches high. And if we were to select the complete predicate, right, the verb and all the other words, then we can say it is can jump 7 inches high. All right, so the director creates suspense with haunting music. So the director creates suspense with haunting music. Is it the director, option 1, or haunting music, option 2? And if we select the complete subject within that sentence, right, the 2 words that make up a complete subject, and then the 2 words will be the director. That is the complete subject, right? Remember, it is um the subject, or it is the predicate plus any other words that describes or modifies it. So it says dedicated volunteers. We need to select the complete subject. 2 words that make up the complete subject. Dedicated volunteers remove litter from the beach. And if we were to select the 2 words, or to identify the 2 words that make up a complete subject, and is it dedicated volunteers, which is option 1, or the beach, option 2. And if we select the 2 words that make up a complete subject, and then we can say it is dedicated volunteers. Now it says select two words that make up the complete subject. It says two skiers crisscross the snowy hill. Two skiers crisscross the snowy hill. We need to select the two words that make up a complete subject. Is it option one, two skiers, or option two, snowy hill? And if we were to select the two words that make up a complete subject, we will say it is two skiers. All right. So now we're going on to the next lesson, which is identify the simple subject or simple predicate in a sentence. And remember, we said a simple subject and a simple predicate, right, is only the noun or it is only the pronoun without all the other added words, without the words that describes or modifies the noun. And when it comes to the predicate, it is only the predicate or only the verb without the other words that describes or modifies that verb. All right. So now we are going to our test where we are going to identify the simple subject and the simple predicate. And remember, once again, it is only the noun or it's only the pronoun. That is a simple subject. And it is only the verb, and that is the simple predicate. And now it says we need to select the simple subject. Her favorite pastime surprise most people. Her favorite pastime surprises most people. Is it pastime or is it people? And if we were to select our simple subject, right, only the noun or the pronoun without any other words, we can say it is people. Oh, it's actually past time. I apologize. Past time. He circled his favorite line of the poem. He circled his favorite line of the poem. We need to select the simple predicate. The simple predicate of that sentence, the verb. It says he circled his favorite line of the poem. We need to select our verb within that sentence. Is it circled or is it poem? Circled or poem. And the simple predicate is circled. He circled his favorite line of the poem. Only the verb, not all the other added words to it. Her best friend moved away last summer. We need to select the simple subject. Her best friend moved away last summer. Is it summer or is it friend? Summer or friend? And if we select our correct simple subject, we can say it is friend, not best friend, just friend. We need to select the simple subject. It says golden honey oozed from the overturned bottle. So golden honey oozed from the overturned bottle. We need to select our simple subject, only the noun or pronoun without all the other added words. And if we were to select our simple subject, right, which is only the noun or only the pronoun, it says golden honey oozed from the overturned bottle. And honey it is. Look at the last one. It says Rick pruned the rose bushes in Mrs. Garrison's garden. We need to select the simple subject. Rick pruned the rose bushes in Mrs. Garrison's garden. The simple subject is it Rick, or our simple subject is it garden? So Rick or garden. So Rick or garden. We need to select our simple subject, only the simple subject, which is only the noun or only the pronoun without all the other added things. And if we were to select our simple subject, we would say it is Rick, right? All right. So we went over what is a complete subject and a complete predicate. And we said a complete subject, right, is a completed subject tells us who or what is doing something, and it is the subject plus any other words that describes or modifies the subject. And then we have a completed predicate, which is a basically words that tells us about the completed predicate and all the other words that either describes or modifies a predicate. Then we came to a simple subject and simple predicate and simple subject and predicate. Simple subject is only the noun or only the pronoun without all the other added descriptions or modifications, as well as a predicate is only the verb, right? No other words that describes or that modifies the verb. Only the verb, only the subject. All right, so next time we will continue with subject and predicate. But for now, thank you very much for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.